Hey everyone, this is Dr. Kanita here on another episode of Arya Holistic Health Podcast. I forget which episode I'm on. I think like 6 now. But I'm here with my really good friend, Dr. Hiza. He is a doctor of physical therapy and he has also treated me because doctors can get injured too. So,
No.
and speaking about how we met, I think for what I remember, you came when I first worked with Dr. Park at Pro Spine Rehab. Like I was just fresh out of school and starting my career as a chiro slash acupuncturist. I think you came in to visit, right, one day.
Yeah, I did. I remember because I was really, I think we were one of a mutual patient of ours was like, yeah, you guys should definitely talk. And he's like, yeah, he's
Mhm.
got his practice right down the street from you. And so we finally made it happen. This was pre-pandemic days where you could just
Yes,
show up at someone's
right.
office.
With
you just
well, you just
you could
show
just
up,
you
no
could just
appointment.
show up. Yeah, so that's how we met. At the time, I remember the first thing we talked about was, yeah, I play tennis and I've got this ACL thing and I got this,
Yeah.
and I remember we talked a little bit about that, and I think we left off. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll follow up with you at some point, and then that was
Yeah.
kind of it.
Yeah, and I think I can't quite remember all the sequences of events, but I think we did talk a lot about entrepreneurship and how
Yeah,
you started your practice. Because I was still, just like fresh, it's just like just fresh at everything.
fresh. Everything's exciting.
And,
Yeah.
I don't know if this happened to you, but I felt like my brain needed a full year to heal after school, after you're done with school. I don't know if that happened to you too.
I don't know. It's a great question. I think for me, um, I kind of just hit the ground running because my
Mm,
circumstance was a little different. So when I got hired, um, I was recruited, and so my buddy who at the time, um, he invited me down. He pestered me nonstop. Hey, you gotta come to DC. Come check it out. Come check it
mhm.
out. Come check it out. I finally came, and I remember uh, talking to like the administrator there, and I met a few of the. It was a physician-owned practice,
Mm.
and then I remember talking to a few of them. Then I left, and then I got an offer letter, and then I was like, sure, I'll take. And then I came down, and it's like, oh no, it's just going to be the two of you, and we were two new grads, so we were just
Oh,
right out
wow.
of right out of school, and they're like, yeah, no, this is you,
Just
just do it.
go.
We'll support you along the way, but yeah, hire the people that you want to hire, build that out,
Mhm,
do what you need to do, and grow it the way you want to see it.
mhm,
So we were just really two new grads, really eager to just kind
mhm.
of get after it. And so I vividly remember going, oh, wait, we don't have a supervisor. Wait, but we're the supervisors. But if we're the supervisors, who's who's manning the store?
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a really interesting. It was a great learning experience
Mhm,
because I did get to see a lot of the inner workings of how basically how the sausage is made,
mhm.
and and I realized, so going in, but also I got to make a lot of mistakes,
Mhm.
but have a lot of support behind that, and someone, more, to put it mildly, I could make a mistake and someone would be there to clean it up for me, at least polish it up, and not make it such a big deal. So it was a really important part of my education,
Mhm.
because I learned right off the bat, how the process works, because again, they don't teach you the minutia of healthcare while you're
Yeah.
in school, right? You get the gist of it. Yes, there's insurance, and that's
Mhm,
that. And yes, you have a copay, but they don't talk about co-insurance. They don't
mhm,
talk about, your deductibles and all of those
mhm.
things. So, my colleague and I, we both had to learn the ins and outs because we also had to do all the contract renegotiations with all these different
Yeah.
insurance companies. And again, it put a bad taste in our mouth going through that, because it was a rude awakening for us, for both of
Mhm.
us, and it was kind of a pivotal
Yeah.
point of my career.
Yeah, I think we're kind of taught, and I know it was like that. It was very similar. They're like, oh, it's business. Write
Yeah,
a business plan.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
put it
Write a business
together.
plan, and that's it. And yeah, we didn't do. I mean, yeah. So for us, it was just kind of trial by fire, and
Yeah, felt like it's a
luckily,
lot of
luckily
trial
we
by
were.
fire.
Yeah, luckily we were resilient enough. But yes, and so I worked there for um 8, almost
Hmm.
no 6 years,
Wow. Okay.
6.5 years, and then so I ended up running the department for 3.
Hmm.
And then we did at some point we did hire a supervisor or manager because we both realized it wasn't for us at the time. Like we were just wanting to be clinicians, but we would,
Yeah.
I mean, and we were young, we were just new grads, and so we would work hard, party hard. We
Hmm.
didn't want the extra
That cycle.
responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a really great experience
Hmm.
for both of us, and we both ended up going into starting our own practices. And I think
Awesome.
a lot of it was just kind of coming from that, and it was a great experience for me. I got to learn a lot, and I also learned what I didn't want in terms of
Yes, I think that's
what a
very,
practitioner should do.
yeah, very important to learn what you don't want in your own
Yeah,
stuff.
but yeah, but you and I, we spent a lot of time in the beginning just kind of chit chatting back and forth, and there were a lot of coffee meetups, and
Hmm.
just kind of discussing. I was really curious about your process. I wanted to see, just young entrepreneurs got these
Hmm.
huge goals, and then you're like, yeah, so I'm thinking about this and this and this, and this is going to happen, and it boom materialized, and boom, there you are, and
Yeah,
then it was like one thing after the other, and then you look back, you're like, I did all of that.
I know.
All right.
It's kind of fun. I mean, I know you understand this as an entrepreneur too. Just seeing that you have to be, and we're gonna talk about resilience because I feel like that's the theme of like your body when we get into the PT stuff, but just your mindset about your business too and your practice and what you want because you're gonna inherently always mess up. I messed up a lot. So in
Hmm.
the beginning, like,
Oh yeah.
oops, I didn't mean to do it that way. But the good thing for me was that I kind of will execute, and then even if I mess up, I'm like, okay, just try something else.
Right.
You just got to keep going till something works. And, doing this too, I found out it's super fun. I get to talk to my friends like you, and
Yeah.
we talk about fun things and how we interact with our patients and the ups and downs with that too. I think we talked
Oh
about
yeah.
during our last coffee
Yeah.
date chats.
I love it. I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, you just kind of the default is that this could go sideways pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
you just have to kind of just as long as you have that kind of mindset that hey, whether it pans out or
Yeah.
it completely blows up, it's going to be a learning experience.
Exactly.
Either
Yes.
way, you're going to learn.
Exactly. You're gonna learn something.
You're going to learn something. And I think that's kind of the mindset for entrepreneurs. That's kind
Mm.
of our default, right? It's like, you know, yeah, the scariest part isn't the actual doing, it's the lead up to the doing, right? It's
Yes.
like 'cause you go through all of that, like, okay, did I dot this I? Did I cross this
That's his
T? Did
tea.
I
Yeah.
do this, that? And then you kind of get started and you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're like,
Hmm.
all right. But now you're like, but now I'm on the other side. Oh man, I really gotta make this work. Oh no. And then so basically like there's
Yeah.
never an end to kind of
Hmm.
that second guessing of yourself,
Yes.
right? You always feel a certain level of like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like I'm an imposter. I don't know if I belong in the same
Yeah.
space with these people who are doing these things. And so, you know, I think for entrepreneurs, we just kind of have that mentality, and it's very hard to compare ourselves to other people
Hmm.
because everybody's doing something different. And
Yes.
whether you agree or you disagree with how they're doing it, if it's someone that you enjoy working with, it means that it's working, right? They're
Hmm.
doing something and they figured out something that works for them.
Hmm.
And yeah, you can kind of cherry pick the pieces that you like, and leave the rest,
Yeah.
leave the rest
Yes. I
on the
find that.
cutting floor.
Yes, I find that even when I do stuff, I also learn in terms of um when I start doing something because like you can plan all you want, to start a business, but if you
Mhm.
don't execute, if you don't do something or move, take that step forward or risk, won't get anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard, I think that's the hard part about, what people don't appreciate about being an entrepreneur is that the part that really excites us is that, like, the lead up, the
Yeah.
anticipation, right? Like, I know it's weird, it's a weird thing, but, like, our brains just that's kind of our
Hmm.
default, right? It's like the risk of just jumping out of a perfectly good airplane and
Yes.
with
You're
no
like, oh
parachute and,
God,
like,
I'm gonna try.
why why am I out here right now?
Uh,
But I think that's really telling for, for a lot of us, especially in healthcare, because
oh yeah,
it's such a
absolutely.
different beast, right? It's such a
Hmm.
different process. And a lot of patients don't consider what we do as a business, right? They think of
Hmm.
we've had this mindset that healthcare is not healthcare, that it's just this fixed cost, right? It's not a fixed cost, it's a business. it
Hmm.
it breathes and it has the
Hmm.
same economic stressors as any other business,
Hmm.
and that process kind of plays in, because again, for my practice, I'm out of network provider for all my
Hmm.
patients, so I don't, my patients submit claims, but I do not
Yeah.
participate with any
Hmm.
insurance companies. So it's a different. And I remember when I was telling my old bosses at the time, like, yeah, I'm going to be leaving. And they're like, oh, what insurances are you working with? I go, none. And they all, they're like middle-aged, you know, orthopedists. And so they
Yeah.
all kind of looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what do you mean no insurance? It's like, I'm going to work it out. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to take insurance. I'm just going to create a process where my
Hmm.
patients just find value in what I
Hmm.
do, right? Rather
Hmm.
than selling physical therapy. I think the sell isn't physical therapy. The sell is, what could you be doing differently? What could you be doing differently? What could you do if you had that extra range of motion? And so for me, it's always been a lifestyle practice. So, which allows me to attract a lot of people who have lifestyle challenges, right? And so it kind of works itself out when you're an entrepreneur and you just do what you like,
Hmm.
and you're going to attract the people that you want to work with. And I think it's such a hard part for a lot of us to appreciate, because you think, like, I want to cast the widest net and
Yeah.
drudge up all the stuff, and hopefully then I can sort through it and figure out
Yeah.
what's going to work or what's not
Hmm.
going to work. But you almost have to rethink that and say, I need to create the space there that attracts my ideal patients,
Yes.
right? Or my
Yeah.
ideal candidates. And so, I know we spent a lot of time talking about that and trying to, how do you find your voice in all of
Hmm.
this, right? Because there's so much,
There's so
so much
much
coming at you, and
background
social
noise.
media doesn't help. Social
Yeah.
media doesn't help, because you
Yeah.
start to look and you go,
Yeah. You
they're
always
doing
put out
something
good
amazing.
stuff. I feel like if we have that, knowing ourselves, our values, and for me, the social media, I know a lot of like practitioners may not want to use it. They're like, oh, it's so annoying. But I try to use it as like I'm trying to put what I believe in out there. And if I
Mhm.
enjoy it, then I know it's fine or it's good.
Yeah.
And what you said earlier kind of led to my question that I had actually about physical therapy and what you've seen change over the years, like working at that first practice you were at, the department, versus what you do now and what you've
Mhm.
seen, kind of the shift, I guess, in what physical therapy, um, I guess, how physical therapy is used now versus earlier. Does that kind of make sense, that
It
question?
does. I think the challenge for a lot of us has been to kind of change what the perception of physical therapy is,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of times, physical therapy has always been associated with, a certain demographic, right? Or, okay, they, you know, have low back pain, or someone's going to go and they're going
Hmm.
to get stretched, or someone's going to go
Hmm.
and they get manual therapy, or whatever it may be. Um, but we left out, like, a huge demographic of active people who need that same level of
Hmm.
expertise and education,
Hmm.
and the space where you can curate that experience for them. And so my take on physical therapy is really, I don't sell physical therapy. I
Mhm.
sell the option of living a life without limitations,
Mhm.
right? Or just being
Mhm.
knowledgeable enough and being confident enough that you can get back to doing the things that you enjoy doing without
Yes.
overthinking it, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's a different way of looking at performance, but in essence, all we're doing is really kind of channeling back to that person that energy that they gave up because they thought that they were fragile or they couldn't do this or they
Mm.
couldn't resume a certain lifestyle because
Mhm.
somebody else had told them that it's impossible to do that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think it's reworking a lot of kind of psychosocial
Mm.
stressors and changes because my niche has kind of changed over the years, but I work with a lot of active people, and for
Mhm.
them, the thought of not being able to do the thing that I enjoy is the stressor. So for them, they
Mm.
don't look at coming to physical therapy or working with me as a cost they have to incur. They look at it as what's the cost of not doing this,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
What's the
Yeah.
cost of not feeling confident? What's the cost of not being able to play tennis? What's the cost of
Mhm.
not being able to, work out at the CrossFit box with my friends? What's the cost
Mhm.
of not feeling strong enough after I've delivered my child? What's the cost of
Mm.
not being able to
Yes.
bike and not be able to?
That's
So
a huge thing. Yeah, I
if
love.
you change the if you change the mindset, it becomes less of it, oh my God, I gotta pay for this service, as opposed to what's the cost of not
Mhm.
paying for that service?
Yeah, it brings in mind that quote that your health is wealth. Health is
Right.
wealth.
Yeah, yeah. But absolutely, I mean, I think the biggest change for me that I've noticed in physical therapy is really a bigger push to specialize in these different subcategories, right? we have
Mm.
we have performers, we work with
Mhm.
performers, we work with metabolic patients, we work with neuro patients, but we've also been able to create an environment that it doesn't have to be a sterile environment, like a sterile clinical environment
Yeah.
either. Like
Yeah.
my space is mostly if you walked in, it looks just like a gym, right? So it's a
Mhm.
clinic, it's just a gym, it's got regular gym equipment, but I see patients with neurological conditions there. I see patients with, post-op,
Mhm.
challenges. I see patients with, in between stressors and sprains and strains. So if I can do that in that space, you can do this anywhere. You just
Mhm.
have to, you just have to create the environment that works for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I love that cuz I know at least for me and my husband, we actually talked about how much we do kind of value our own health cuz I distinctly can say when I don't do my activity like tennis, I feel like I need to hit something. It's really my stress reliever, like tennis. And
yeah.
you help me with boxing too. Even though I haven't done that as much, I still have tennis. But
Hmm.
like keeping my body moving greatly improves my mood in general. Um, and that's the whole like hormonal shift. All the endorphins that happen during exercise and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And this was an interesting story because I know you saw me. I texted Dr. Isa one day. I came back from like my kung fu thing and I was like, Doc, I dislocated my shoulder. And I was so mad because, I kind of had this cascade effect. I was like, I won't be able to do this because I have done it to um, my left side, but I was not as diligent with the rehab and I was also quite young. So I wanted, when you dislocate your shoulder, you're more likely to do it again. And I didn't do the proper rehab, had to get surgery. So when I did on my right side, which is worse because it's my dominant arm, I was like, oh no. that dread of like I won't be able to do the same things. And I was really scared because that's like, how I serve doing tennis and doing my boxing. And so I think Dr. Isa, when I worked with him in the beginning, he really kind of helped me with my mindset. He's like, okay, we're gonna get these working your rotator cuff like muscle stronger. We're going to do get up to until I became more confident with um, my movements with boxing and tennis, that now I don't have a problem when it hasn't reoccurred. So I was like, yes. But I think, yeah, Success story.
I was like, where's she going with this? Oh, no.
I want to put you under the bus, but I'm
I
just
know,
saying
right?
it
Good thing,
takes,
good thing.
yes, it's that mindset shift as like,
Mhm.
oh, some people were like, oh, I won't, I'm not gonna move my shoulder. I'm just gonna leave it, like get it to rest. But changing the mindset is like, no, okay, I can get better. Let me go slow at it. Don't do too much. And you definitely need, a professional or um, to kind of guide you through that to know, hey, you probably like shouldn't do any overhead smashes yet. Just
Right, right.
but kind of go at like 30%, and then I slowly ramped up until I
Mhm.
could fully extend and fully go at like 100% of my power. But it's a whole mindset shift of what your limitations are, but also keeping your body resilient and strong and being able to do, you know, our favorite activities as well.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I think the difficulty isn't in the practice itself. It's really instilling that love of confidence again. And I think a lot of my patients kind of have that similar experience to
Mm,
you, Doc. Is that like all they want to do is just find that rhythm again, right? I just want to get back to doing. I just want to
mhm,
do. I just want to do it my way. I want to figure out how I can kind of keep this going because it's such a intricate part of my life. It's such an important
mhm,
part of my life. So I think I've always kind of gravitated to those types of people anyway. So
mm,
even as a as a young clinician, I mean most of my I think the people that I empathize the most were people who are I just want to get out of here so I can get back to doing that. And I think
mhm,
that because you realize the hardest thing is to motivate someone to get back to doing what they want to do.
mhm,
That's the hardest part when they're injured because, like you said, all of those thoughts, right? All
mhm.
of those things, all of those, we shouldn't do this right now.
Yeah.
I don't, are you ready? I don't know if you're
Mhm.
ready. Right? All of that self doubt is part of, is
Mhm,
something that needs to be appreciated when you're assisting someone
mm,
kind of get back to doing. And without realizing that, without appreciating that fact, even if they get better, if you haven't reconciled that self doubt,
mhm,
then you really haven't given them um, as much of a benefit. If anything, you just created more problems because now there's a disconnect, right? So they're telling me I'm strong, they're telling me I'm
mm,
ready to go, but I have all this doubt, I have all this insecurity, I have all this anxiety about doing.
mhm,
So it becomes a really big conflict where
mm.
you're constantly trying to kind of, and then that becomes the energy, right? That's what takes all your energy when you're on court or on a field or
Yeah.
in the gym is that you're no longer there you're not actually playing or you're not actually performing.
Mhm.
You're just ruminating about the what if,
If
right?
yeah.
Or,
Mhm,
or when, or,
mhm,
yeah. So I think for me, that I've always had a soft spot for performers because I know how long they've been mistreated. I know how long that's been the case, right? I know how long have they been ignored because,
mhm,
oh yeah, well you can lift 300 pounds. That's not a big deal. You're
mhm,
okay. But I'm like, that's not the
mhm.
goal is not to be able to just lift, but can you do it confidently?
Yeah.
And if you ask, how do you feel about that? I'm scared. I was scared the whole time doing it, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask with I know you see mostly people who are motivated to get back into the activities.
Mhm.
So with some of your patients, they may have some self-doubt, or I guess how's your process to help appreciate that, help them kind of get through that as well?
Well, I like to set very clear boundaries with my patients, and not in a bad way, but
Yeah.
I like
Mhm.
to create a sense of ownership in the process. They should feel like they have skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
They're not going for kind of a passive treatment, right? Like you're not
Mm.
coming to me because you're looking for a passive treatment where you're gonna lay down and I have to do all the work.
Yeah, let me tell
Yeah,
you, I
yeah.
always sweat when he did PT. He just laughed. The doctor used to just laughed at me as I was just suffering. So it's a lot of work. No, it was really good.
I was
Um,
laughing on the inside though.
yes,
I don't do it in
yes,
front of her.
yeah.
Not anymore. Not
Not anymore.
anymore. I'm trying to be a professional now. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. Um, no, I think that has always been my philosophy is that I want I want my patients so knowledgeable about their current condition that I can give them small bite-sized assignments for them to work
Mhm.
through. Like, okay, great. I'm going to see you for a few visits, but then I'm going to give you a wide berth. I need you to work on these
Yeah.
areas
Mhm.
because I don't have to worry about you doing it, right?
Mhm.
Because you would
Yeah.
rather do something geared towards getting back to doing what you enjoy doing than 3 to 4 times a week hanging out with me and me
Mhm.
telling you to do it, right? And
Yeah.
plus that time is really important because that's where you develop that confidence. That's where you build that confidence.
Mhm.
That's where you go, oh my God, I've been doing this for 3 weeks and nothing weird has happened. I think
Mhm.
we might be heading in the right direction here. Or, oh my God, I've been doing this for, 4 to 6 weeks. And now he told me if once I get to this point, I have this and this and this, I've achieved these goals, then I need to go back and see him. So
Mhm.
it gives the patient back that ownership of this
Mm.
process. It
Mhm.
gives the patient back. They can now narrate their own story. I'm no longer narrating the
Yeah.
story. They can tell their own story of success. They can tell their own story of perseverance.
Mhm.
They can tell their own story of being resilient and kind of fighting through all
Mhm.
those stresses and challenges. And it's just less stressful too.
Mhm.
It's performers are finicky. They're very finicky people. Before you gotta have to give them explicit directions because if you give them open-ended assignments, they'll always run off with it and do the most extreme. So
Yeah.
you have to create set boundaries and say, from now on until 3 weeks from now,
Mhm.
I want you to work on this, this,
This,
and
yeah.
this.
It
I
makes
need you to
sense.
master this.
Yeah.
And then, but as the time goes on, then you get less and less rigid with the
Mhm.
instructions, and it becomes more open ended. Like, yeah,
Mm.
now, okay, it's been 8 weeks. Okay, great. Your strength is better. You're doing better. You haven't created any challenges. No sensitivity. You haven't no setbacks. Okay, great. Now instead of having these strict like stay in this lane, now it's okay. I want you to choose mobility, stability, or flexibility. You pick any of those things and kind of mix and match and add a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And then once you do that for a few weeks, then let's connect
Mm.
again and we'll address that. But I think, and everyone's different, but everyone I know needs that time to work through
Mhm.
a lot of those stressors, right? So
Mhm.
that's kind
Mm.
of the challenge, which is different. It's a different thinking because in the insurance side of PT, that is not the most economic or most viable, economical
Yeah. Just
process,
thinking about
right?
it, be like, "What are you doing?" I'd be so confused.
Right. I can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine in kind of in network setting going, hey, you know what? I'm glad you want to come see us 2 to 3 times a week for 4 to 6 weeks. Great, but I want to see you 2 times, and then I'm going to give you 3 weeks to work through that, and then I'm going to see
Mhm.
you another 2 times, and I give you another three.
They just
Your
freak out.
supervisor or manager would be like, "What are you doing?"
The thing
Because
is,
they're not.
with people too, it's hard to always come in, right? To go like
Yeah.
they have to take time out of their schedule and
Right.
take off work, and it's really difficult unless you're
Absolutely.
a flexible
Yeah.
schedule. But yeah, I like how you said with the different movements, thinking about you want to do strength, you want to do flexibility. That that kind of brought to mind how I um, think about resilience in my body. Because, for example, right now, doing more cardio, and I um, have, a lot of people know I have two humongous dogs. So that's like working on core stability and cardio at the same time when I
At the
walk
same
them.
time.
But, I don't look at like, oh, okay, I'm just doing, one thing for forever. It's just, I always, maybe it's just like how I work. I'm like, I'm just going to do some more strength training this week. I'm not necessarily trying to get super bulky, but just for my own way of like, oh, I feel like I need to do more strength movement, and then adding to
Mhm.
that doing the tennis, the cardio, and
Yeah.
that's like a whole body kind of dynamic movement.
Yeah.
Um, but I also don't. I dislike running, so I need a reason to run.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you bring that up because I think, you know, one of the other things, sorry, to kind of go back to one of the
Yeah.
earlier questions you asked, is the how has kind of like my practice style, has it changed in terms of like when I first started
Hmm.
as a new clinician to currently? I think now my knowledge base is so much broader.
Mm,
I look into a lot of things that were not even in my periphery, like gut health, looking at
mm,
sleep, looking at metabolic
hmm,
conditions, right? Appreciating those things, right? Appreciating that they exist and
mm,
they impact how someone heals. So for me, I think being a more well-rounded clinician has allowed me to open my horizon and broaden my horizon and appreciate that there are so many other aspects to performance than just can you lift it or can you
hmm.
move it or can you stabilize it, right?
Yeah.
Those are important, but you know, sleeping
Yep.
habits,
You need sleep.
stressors, yeah, stressors. What's your lifestyle like currently? You know, what's your stress level like currently? Well, yeah, if you're really stressed and you're stressed on top of that, it's hard to be focused and, you
Mm,
know, follow directions when it comes to training because again
hmm.
you're all over the place. If you know you have some issues with gut health, that is going to affect absorption, which means that whatever you're taking in, you may not be absorbing those
Mm,
nutrients to the max, which means that
hmm.
your training may be getting sabotaged or your performance or your healing may be sabotaged because you're not absorbing those necessary nutrients effectively.
Yeah.
And also just looking at what your diet is like, right? Hey, what do you eat? Do you eat a lot of foods that are inflammatory? Do you eat a lot of foods that build you up, or do you how do you eat? Are you a
Hmm.
fast? Do you do intermittent
Hmm.
fasting? Do you you know uh, all of those things help create a kind of a broader tapestry to
Mm,
help someone navigate, you know, injury and navigate
yeah.
return to performance.
Yeah. I think the one thing you hit on with recovery, which I feel like not a lot of physical therapists or just in general talk about that. It's like, yeah, you're doing all these exercise. And one of my teammates on my tennis team, she's like, "Goody, I'm so tired." I'm like, "It's because you're playing 4 matches a week, you crazy person.
Right, right.
You're not, recovering well." And I learned from my first. I'm always going to bring it back to tennis. So my first match, I did not learn how to recover well. I didn't have the right fluids or the intake of food right after, kind
Mhm.
of a high intense, whether you're training or performing too. It's just that uh, recovery phase, like to sleep and to make sure you're getting the nutrients to recover properly
Right.
is super, super important. I guess do you have some recovery tips for people who are high performance athletes or that you've seen that help after a training session or a match or something like that?
Um, well, I mean, it really depends
Mhm,
on kind of what their current rhythm is like, right? So, and I think that's where, you know, being a good listener when you're
mhm,
doing that initial intake, or when just in general, you know, you can glean a lot about a performer or about a patient's lifestyle just through a normal conversation. But for the most part, I'd like to appreciate what their stress level is like. What
mhm,
are the stressors in their lives? And then are those stressors impacting key metrics like sleep? Are they
mhm,
impacting key metrics like diet, nutrition? How are you managing that stress?
mhm,
Are you are you doing more social drinking? Are you drinking more frequently? Are
mhm.
you drinking more often? Do you find yourself kind of bonking out in the middle of the day? Are you kind of fatigued
Yeah.
early? So I like to appreciate all of those um, changes primarily because they they help and they illuminate a lot more about the primary focus for that
Mhm.
person. Because so I've had instances where I've told patients I can't treat you right now
Mm.
until these metrics improve
Mhm, mhm.
because there's no amount of strength and conditioning
Yeah.
that's going to that's going to improve these changes or these challenges if you're not sleeping well, if
Mm-hmm.
you're if you're sleeping late, you're drinking a lot, and you're consuming a lot of alcohol, and you're drinking a lot of caffeinated beverages,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not hydrating throughout the day.
Mm.
So, yeah. So if you're not eating well, if you're not creating the best environment, again, it kind of goes back to that. What's the cost?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah. Yeah.
cost of not creating the best environment for your body to
Mm-hmm.
heal, for your body to improve? What's that cost to you?
Mm-hmm.
If you think it's not that high of a cost, then yeah, that's fine. But I can't be. It's hard. It's hard enough to treat someone who wants to get back to a lifestyle, but it's harder to help them see how important those milestones are being
Mm-hmm.
sabotaged
Yeah.
by their life. So it's important that I educate them on that. But yeah, I've had a few patients who are like, at this
Mm.
point, from our conversation, physical therapy or performance therapy is not for you, or
Mm.
medical strength and conditioning
Yeah.
is not for you. This is not for you. You may feel like it is, but what you're telling me, what your body is saying, is that this is
Mm-hmm.
not for you right now, and that's okay. And my job is not to, say I take every patient that
Yeah.
comes in, no matter what. My job is to be objective and to educate people first,
Mm-hmm.
then see, hey, based on that education, is this a match? Is this something that um, we can both agree on, and we can work to improve upon those milestones? Because that part's hard. That
Mm-hmm.
part's hard. And I'm the first to tell you that I know what stress feels like, and I know how
Yeah.
much it affects me. I remember going, when I was starting my practice. I remember the
Yeah.
stress of the lead up, not sleeping well, but still thinking
Mm-hmm.
I could still run my half marathons.
Right. Yeah.
My I can still do my long bike rides, and eat
Mm-hmm.
eat a whole pizza at the end of the
Yeah. Oh,
day. And
yeah. Yeah.
so, but that I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to cope with all of those stresses coming at me at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
I was young, I was ambitious, but I also, was scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of sleepless nights of stress and
Yeah.
anxiety, and but I didn't know how to kind of regulate all those things
Mm-hmm.
until I started working with my colleague and good friend of mine, Dr. Wong,
Mm-hmm.
who started Capital Integrative
Yeah.
Health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at that time, he was a hospitalist for
Mm-hmm.
one of the big hospitals, and so we worked in the same building, and we were also neighbors. So we would
Oh, that's funny.
jog home. We would work out together, jog home, and we would talk about
Yeah.
all these things. And then so he was like, "Yeah, this is what I'm thinking about doing." And I was like, "Oh man, that
That sounds
sounds that
cool.
sounds awesome, but it sounds like a lot of work." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but I'm starting here." So he got did his thing and started that, and then once I kind of got going, I mean, I managed my stress as best as I could, but I think I know my body suffered. I mean, I lost so much weight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had, all sorts of like weird like rashes, and like,
Oh, yeah.
it was just nonstop. It was just, and as soon as I figured out that, I mean, I went to dermatologists, I went to
Mm-hmm.
every, my primary care, I went to everybody, and nobody knew how to explain it. They're like, well, your blood pressure's okay. Well,
It's like, thanks.
your resting heart rate is okay, but they didn't know. And I think that was kind of my take once I, kind of explained some of these things to Dr. Wong. And he was like, "Hey, are you under a lot of stress?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I
Yeah.
kind of went through that. He's like, "Well, it sounds like it's more hormonal than anything else. You're having a
Mm-hmm.
lot of hormonal changes."
Yeah. Especially with the
And
skin too.
yeah, there's a lot of hormonal changes that are all happening at the same time, and you're just not coping very well. You're not coping very well. I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm on top of the
I'm
world.
fine.
I figured this out. I'm good. I know how to. I'm not stressed." And so he kind of had me go through a couple of questionnaires, and he's like, Yeah, you're
Yeah.
stressed.
Yeah. I
You're off
remember
your rocker right
I
now.
remember so I actually go to Capital Integrative Health too, and the first test they have you do, what is that called? Like it's the one, it's not the body scan, but it's the one to measure kind of how well you adapt to stress and your
Yes,
mental.
the evoke.
So yeah, I think so. And I remember I did it right after I finished school, and remember how it was so terrible because it literally, the report literally said, you went through mental trauma, you need to. I was like, that's how bad it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
after school, just because I would say that the school stress was not as bad as like college, but it was still very taxing,
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
strict, a lot of intense studying. And I tried to sleep on time, but you're just trying your best to study and sleeping late. You have bad eating habits.
Yeah.
However, the good news is you can heal from it. It
You
just,
can. You can. And
yes.
you're absolutely right. And I think that's the other takeaway for so many of our communities that we want. I mean, the goal is not to scare people into doing or taking action. The
Hmm.
goal is to just educate people and remind them that the body is really, really a
Hmm.
very robust organism and that
Yes.
it heals itself. It can heal itself.
Yeah, I think after a year, it
Yeah.
went back to normal, and I was like,
Yeah.
"You're fine." And I'm like, "Sweet, all my stuff worked."
Yeah. Yeah. The
Sleeping, you
body
kind of need
system.
sleep.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it is such a, it's still such a novel idea that sleep is an important metric, but it's yeah. And people say, well, what about the quality of sleep? And no, you just need to give your brain a chance
Mm,
to
mhm,
recover, to
mhm.
just shut down, to kind of just
Yeah.
power down for a little bit
Mhm,
because, you know, all of that constant running and all that constant
mhm.
work, it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy to power the brain, right?
Mhm,
So the energy that you're taking in addition to the stresses that you're trying to
mhm,
reconcile at the same time, it takes a lot out of you. And
mhm,
it makes sense. Yeah, if you're sleep deprived and you're drinking coffee and you're drinking booze
yeah.
and you're wondering why you're not sleeping very well,
Or you're not
try
performing as well, or yeah,
or
yeah,
why you're
all that
always
stuff.
tired, right?
Yeah.
Why I can't believe
Mhm,
I'm always so tired. I'm like, well, let's take a look at what's going on. So if
mhm,
you look at all those metrics, and that's why I say, I always I the one thing I tell new grads and some established clinicians who are kind of in these mastermind groups that I run is that you have to remind yourself that all of the objective measurements are not as important sometimes as the subjective
mhm,
information, right?
mhm,
What the patient is telling you or not telling you sometimes can be a lot more important and a lot more educational than manual muscle tests and
mhm.
active
Yes.
motion. Yes, while we do use those to confirm that your approach is improving
Mhm,
things, but if you don't take into consideration those subjective things could be sabotaging your patient's ability to get well.
mhm, mhm.
And again, I don't think every patient needs to be sat down and explain the power of stress and the power of sleep and the power of eating healthy, power of staying hydrated and the importance of all of those factors. But I think it should always be a point to remind everyone, whether you're a
Mhm.
performer, whether you're, hey, I was cleaning the gutters and I was bringing the ladder down and I strained my shoulder and now I need to figure out what to do. And but if you don't approach that from that aspect, and now with the pandemic, I mean, what we realize is just how metabolically stressed we are, right? So all
Mhm.
the metabolic conditions, um, and how they impact inflammation, how they impact a lot of these joint changes and degenerative changes as
Mhm.
well. So we're learning so much more about how our own kind of ecosystem uh, and balance, how that plays a role in maintaining a level of balance, how that plays a role in our body's ability to heal and feel resilient.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny because I've definitely had or talked to patients about you mentioned hydration, and sometimes they like don't drink enough. And you're like, just try this. Just try to drink some water. And then they come in, they're like, I felt so good. I had way more energy. It's like, oh, something is
Yeah.
not always as simple
Yeah.
as that. But I love how you're integrating all that in. I mean, to some extent, I think with what we do, we kind of naturally do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially in like Chinese medicine, they always look at all those things too. And we ask about
Right.
sleep and thirst and appetite. So that all that kind of plays a role. But it's great now with well, I kind of knew you were special in your own way. I mean, that's why I always go to you.
It's the glasses, Doc.
Yes, the
The glasses.
glasses.
The glasses.
But
I
thinking about all
appreciate
those
that.
things is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for my husband, he talks about sleep all the time. He's like, honey, I'm going to get blackout curtains. And I actually tell people too, like, really don't, have your electronics in the room. Or my dad still sleeps with the TV on, but I don't know if that's just habit. But there are certain things, like really simple things you can do to improve
Mm-hmm.
your sleep hygiene and your quality of sleep.
Yeah.
Um, all that
And
things.
yeah, absolutely. And I always tell, I mean, the best piece of advice I tell anyone who's looking to make these changes is don't do them all at once.
Yeah.
Don't do them all at once. It won't be pretty,
Yeah,
right?
small wins, right?
Small little
Yeah.
changes, because the brain does not like sudden shifts, sudden
Yeah.
shifts, sudden shifts in rhythm, sudden shifts in habits, sudden shifts
Mm,
in, you know, whether it's hormonal shifts or whether it's kind of cravings,
mhm,
etc. If you deprive yourself of anything because
mm,
you go cold turkey, your brain is just going
mhm.
to betray you and just
Yeah.
go
Yeah,
on
actually,
overdrive. And
I talked to a couple of nutritionists that say this, like, you don't have to have a hard stop. Like, don't eat any cake or any, alcohol. I mean, alcohol is fine once in a while,
Mhm,
but yeah, if you
mhm.
totally just, stop cold turkey, sometimes not the best idea because
Yeah,
then you kind of go the other extreme and then all of a sudden you drink all this stuff that you're not
yeah,
supposed to.
yeah. And this, yeah. And like you said, even with sleep, right? Like, yeah, okay. For some people, they like to have their phones in their room. That's
Hmm.
fine. Just set a timer that, at a certain time it
Yeah.
just shuts off. It just,
Airplane mode
yeah.
or yeah.
At a certain
Yeah.
time it goes in airplane mode and you're done.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to gentle nudges. I
Hmm.
always say gentle nudges. You don't want to shove yourself into a corner that you can't get out of. You want just gentle nudges, just a little bit here, a little bit there. And small incremental changes make a huge difference
For sure.
when you look at the
Hmm.
totality of it, right? And
Hmm.
my wife and I, we get asked questions about like diet and nutrition all the time and
Oh
fitness all
yeah,
the time,
I
as
bet.
if we are we're not experts in this. Well, I mean, we're experts, but we're not experts in the sense that we adhere to a strict diet or we
Yeah,
adhere to a strict like,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
but it's just simple things that we started when we first met. We always made food. We always cooked at home. We
Hmm.
always found reasons to make, real foods. So it's
Yes.
not that for us, it's not a fad for us, right? It's not like, oh my God, I'm, making real food now because,
Hmm.
I'm told to do that. We've always kind of prioritized that, or
Hmm.
making food from home so you know exactly what you're putting in your food. It's not
Yeah.
something that, we just started. We've always done that. We've always figured out like we like certain foods. We like to make different foods from different cultures, but how can we do that and not, especially at the time when we were first starting, I mean, we
Hmm.
were both broke. I'm like, we
Hmm.
cannot eat out all the time. This
Yeah.
is this is
we're
not
probably we're
sustainable.
probably not ramen all the time
Yeah,
too.
not ramen, but this is not sustainable. These are
Yeah.
not. But we did spend a considerable amount of our earnings on food. We
Hmm.
did. I mean, that's just the way. When we would look at the budget, and we did have to say that that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
I think
okay.
that's
That's the cost,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
That's
that's
the
the cost.
cost.
That's the values that
That's the
you
cost of not the cost of not eating healthy was not worth it for us,
mhm,
right? The cost of finding kind of quick meals that were, not the most optimal was not a cost that we wanted.
mhm,
So yes, so for us, yes, we do prioritize locally sourced food as much as possible.
mhm.
We do prioritize,
Yeah.
eating, and eating meats that are local, and local meaning within like the
Mhm,
80-mile radius of
mhm.
Gaithersburg. But and it's not something that you just all of a sudden wake up and like that's what I'm going to do. So we
Yeah.
did just right off the bat. I
Mhm.
mean, my wife introduced me to um, Butcher Box and
Yes, I did. I hear about
right. So we
that.
did
Yeah.
that for a while, and
Yeah.
because we were trying to figure out what the best way to enjoy healthier cuts of meat,
Mhm.
and then we realized, well, this is kind of silly. We're getting this from way over there somewhere, and it's brought in a frozen box. But there's plenty of farms around here. There's so many
Yeah.
farms around
I
here. So
know.
my wife is a nutritionist, so she's kind of, I mean, Carmen's always spearheaded all of those initiatives.
Yeah, I
So
see your Instagram.
now,
It's awesome too. It's just like
yeah, so now it's kind of grown into this thing, but it is very
I love it.
fascinating. But
I
I
love it.
always tell people like it's not. We didn't just all of a sudden wake up and it's like, you know what? Tomorrow's the day. We're
Mhm.
going. We're going for it. We're going all the way. We're in. All
I
in.
think I think that some people have a natural tendency towards certain aspects of life or health. And like for me too, it was like I was very naturally kind of always moving, and with my husband I kind of introduced like, or part of it was I helped him realize with like what you ate affected how you felt, and he's like, "Oh, it really does."
Hmm.
And he exercises too, and we prioritize kind of our health, taking walks, like going out into nature with our dogs. And having a dog really helps with that because you kind of have to walk them
Yeah. Yeah.
they need to go out.
Yeah.
But yeah, same with me. I was always naturally always wanting to go outside and be out there and keeping my body moving. So I spend a lot of money on like tennis, or you know going to the gym, or any boxing too. But that
Yeah.
for me was worth it because, again, like what is the cost, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
not moving or
Yeah.
not doing those things. But that was
Yeah.
for me. I was good with that too.
I think it is. I mean, most of the choices we make are very irrational decisions that we make
Hmm.
because we don't stop to consider it, right? I mean, even if you think about even just on daily lives, right? There are certain things that I buy that I go, it's just way too expensive, and I don't really need it. And then but then something that I absolutely do need has similar price. I'm like, do I really need to get that? Right. So, but it all that to say that we all have kind of that cost benefit analysis.
Hmm.
We always run that. But and I think that's why for me, having changed my mindset around that
Mm.
and asking myself the reverse engineering that question in terms of like what's the cost of going to a chiro? What's the cost of going to PT? What's the cost of
Hmm.
making sure that I do yearly checkups? What's the cost of I have my yearly physical?
Hmm.
And if you ask yourself that question, it's very easy to see where you can make changes and
Hmm.
substantial changes, right? It's like, yeah, well, why, you're not going to go to the dentist, but you're going to spend, X amount of dollars on, the like most recent designer stuff.
Hmm.
But then you have all these health issues, but you're still prioritizing,
Hmm.
you know, paying a huge
Hmm.
amount of your income on material things that don't necessarily
Hmm.
equate to providing you a healthy outcome, a
Hmm.
healthy
Hmm.
bottom line, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think, and again, I'm not saying that these choices are universal.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone has their own kind of stress point,
Yeah.
but I think just changing the mindset or change or reframing that question and just kind of basically flipping it over
Flipping it.
and kind of giving it back to them, it really makes you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up being less of a choice of, is this something that I need to think about affording compared to, this is something that is going to benefit me in the long run. This might not cost me as much later when I don't have diabetes, when I don't
Yeah.
have hypertension, when I don't have high cholesterol, when I don't have all these metabolic, like, so I don't have coronary
Mm-hmm.
artery disease, right? And when I don't have all these things that are going to be a lot more costly than, kind of that, semi-annual physical with your
Mm-hmm. Or
BP
those
or the
supplements. Yeah.
supplements or,
Yeah.
eating healthy or making sure that you're doing all those
I'll throw
things.
in acupuncture too.
And acupuncture. Yeah. So basically, any of those metrics that provide a healthier you,
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, those are all non-starters. Those are the things that I want people to
Yeah.
prioritize.
No, no brainers for us. I love that.
They're,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely no brainers, as they say. Yeah,
I think
no brainers.
that's I think that's great that you mentioned all those things and flipping the question and kind of like you said, reverse engineering that to patients. One last question because we've been talking for a while. And
I
I
know,
think
right?
we touched. I know
I
we
knew this was gonna happen.
yes we touched upon this a little bit. You might have I watched the one with you and Dr. Wong too. But especially during the pandemic, and we talked about the resilience of not only the body but the mind too. But what are some ways, or what are your thoughts about building resilience in people's bodies, especially now with people, or I mean, people are going back to work, but there's still that work from home
Hmm.
culture and
Hmm.
people being, at a desk all day.
Hmm.
How to build the resilience, what to do to help themselves with that.
Well, I mean, it's it's a it's a complicated answer, but the solution is very simple.
Hmm.
Is, small measurable activities throughout the day,
Hmm.
that you don't necessarily have to, get out of your work gear and get into a workout suit and do a
Go
full
run a
60 minute.
marathon.
Yeah. No, I think small incremental changes, whether it's working on posture while you're at your
Hmm.
workstation, whether it's working on changing positions
Hmm.
often, because I think, we've also created this mindset that, if you're stuck in one position forever, you're going to be stuck like that forever. And that's
Hmm.
the root of pain. What we're starting to appreciate more and more now is that the postural changes themselves aren't responsible for the pain.
Mm.
It's more of an endurance thing, right? So if you don't
Yes.
have endurance
Yes.
and you
Hmm.
can't tolerate that position, yes,
Hmm.
after a while, those muscles are going to be like, I'm done.
Yeah, they're like,
I'm,
I love how you always explain it this way because I like this is how I explain to patients. I'm
yeah,
like,
I'm done.
these big muscles they're taking over, and because the other muscles are like, I don't want to do
Yeah,
anything.
I don't want to do it.
They're like this
And
gang of people.
yeah, but we've created such a boogeyman concept
Mm.
behind posture and pain, as if,
You
poor
must walk
posture
like
is the
this
lead.
all
Right,
day.
right, right. But I think that the at the heart of it is really to be robust and to be resilient. It's a lot of hard work. It's just day in and day out, and
Hmm.
just it's those
Mm.
small changes and those small consistent things that you do, whether it's, hey, I know every day I got to do, 2 minutes here of my movement, or
Hmm.
3 minutes there, or 5 minutes here, because it's cumulative. So
Exactly. Yes.
if you do 3 to 4 minutes of exercise every single day,
Mm.
7 days a week, compared to, all right, I'm going to get 2 days in where I get my 30 minutes to 60
Hmm.
minutes.
Hmm.
That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
compounding that is huge, right?
Yeah.
The amount
Yeah.
of time, the amount of volume of exercise in a year that you could do at, 3 to 4 minutes a day, compared to trying to find the perfect, 30
Hmm.
minute chunk to work out, is huge. So I always
Hmm.
tell people, small, reasonable goals and
Hmm.
reasonable chunks for you. do not bite off more than you can chew,
Yeah.
because
Then
social
you're gonna
media will
stop.
have you, yeah,
Hmm.
social media will have you believing that, you can get ripped and shredded in, 30 days.
Yeah.
So, or you can change all these hormonal things with,
Yeah.
this special elixir, and, or
Hmm.
buy this from me, and yeah, it takes time. None of those things happen
Hmm.
overnight, and they are steady.
I love that. Yeah, the small change. You reminded me of I think my husband told me that really funny story. There was a guy, I forget, maybe on social media, trying to build his habit to go to the gym. He would legit go, no joke, just spend 5 minutes at the gym, but he would
Mhm.
make himself go and just do like whatever workout
Yeah.
for 5 minutes. But then it built up that habit. He's like, okay, and then made it to 10 minutes, and then did 20 minutes. And I think just building the, like you said, small incremental changes really
Yeah.
does make a big difference.
And that's how we encourage any performer to get back to doing right, whether they're injured or they're
Hmm.
looking to increase performance, is you have to look at what do they do well and what are they not prioritizing.
Hmm.
And whatever they're doing well, you don't have to mess with that.
Yeah.
Whatever they're not prioritizing, that is what you want to address. But again, you
Hmm.
don't give them a full blast of like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this needs to
What's
be
wrong?
fixed.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
work on this, because then they're like,
I know, it's just like that meme of like, oh, oh,
oh, oh. But,
oh.
but like you said, small incremental changes. But I mean, there is no right place to start. You just
Mhm.
have to start.
Yes,
Just
that
kind of
one
like
step
like
forward.
our journeys,
Yeah,
right?
just one step
I
forward.
brought it full circle. I
Yeah,
just
you
brought it full
did.
circle. Did you just
Yes.
see that? You didn't even.
Yo, you did
I knew
so
it was
good.
gonna work. I knew it was gonna work.
I
We
love
just
it.
brought it full circle.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dr.
You're
Isa,
welcome.
for joining me. I mean, I know we always have fun conversations.
Yeah,
I would love to bring you back because there was something you mentioned that I've had a interest in, which is all the postnatal like physical therapy and the
sure.
moms. And I think that's a very, I don't want to say it's newer, but it's not something you hear, how to kind of, I don't know what you call like rehab after having a baby,
Sure.
and the challenges with that, and how, um I know you've done like some prenatal rehab for some of your patients that has
Mhm.
been helpful. So I think that'd be really interesting to talk
Yeah.
about and get your thoughts on it.
I'm happy to share my thoughts on it. I
Yeah.
think I think as you've realized, we don't mind talking, so I think we could I think we could do that.
I think we could do that.
I think
Yes.
we could do
But I
that.
super appreciate your time of joining
Are you
me,
kidding
hanging
me?
out.
Congratulations on the podcast. I love it. I
Yes.
love it. I like the risk taking. This is great. This is all good.
This is
This is
all
all
fun.
good. This is what this whole point. That's the point of all of this, right?
Yes.
That's why we do all the scary stuff.
Yes.
We do all
Yes.
the scary stuff so we get to do cool
I've
things
had,
like host our
yeah.
own podcast.
Yeah, and now I generated more ideas. Like, oh, I have more excuses to talk to Dr. Eza, so I'm gonna
Right.
bring him back,
All right.
and maybe we'll play a game next time. Who knows?
That's right. You know what we should do next time? We'll just go live on one of our coffee meetups. We'll just do live.
Ooh, I like that.
I don't know. Jeff's gonna be like, no,
No.
no, no. The logistics, no.
Yes. Oh gosh. No, I love it. I love it. But thank you so
But
much again.
you're welcome.
And
Thank
with
you so much. I appreciate
all,
you.
um, and I will see everyone who is watching next time.